Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm super excited to share with all of you my thoughts about the new DANESSA MYRICKS Lightwork III Experience Palette. So I don't have that new palette with me, but I do have the original Lightwork III palette, which basically has all of those shades plus a bunch of additional shades. And so today I thought I would run through all of the shades that are in this new palette and give you my thoughts in terms of whether that palette is worth it, and also demo those shades on the lid. So if you're interested in learning more about this new DANESSA MYRICKS palette, then just stick around. So to start off, let me just say that I am excited that DANESSA MYRICKS has finally launched a new version of this palette, because when this palette came out last year, it was a huge hit. It sold out almost immediately, and then it was basically impossible to get your hands on it. I was quite lucky in that I did score the original, and then actually in my lucky bag from Beautylish this year, I also got an additional palette which I gave away to one of you. This was one of my favorite palettes of 2021, and many of you were very curious about it. And so I'm really glad that at least now you can pick up a decent portion of the shades in this new palette. I think the real question though is, given that you only get a subset of these shades, is this palette, which is $85, still worth it? This original one over here was around $125, so you are getting a discount. But depending on the shades that you are most interested in, it might or might not be worth it. So let's first start out by swatching all the shades from this palette that are available in the new palette. So to start, we have Polaris. This is a beautiful cream multi-chrome shadow. So you can see there's not a ton of base pigment to it, but it has a beautiful shine and shift to it. This basically shifts from gold to green to even some blue. As always, it's a little bit difficult to capture multi-chrome effects on camera. So if you see this in person, it is a lot more shifty and beautiful than what you see in camera. Next, we have Galaxy. This shade almost looks like liquid on the skin. It's just so smooth and creamy and has a really beautiful shift from teal to blue to purple. Look at that shine. Next up, we have Martian. This shade is a little bit more desaturated in comparison to Galaxy. It has a beautiful minty green to periwinkle to purple shift to it. A little bit less opaque than Galaxy. And then we have Soul. This is a really glittery golden shade. So this shade is not super unique in that it's not a multi-chromatic shade, but it still is a really beautiful, smooth, creamy formulation with really nice shine. So the next two shades in this palette are not in the new palette, so I will swatch these a little separately. We have Orion and we have Golden Eclipse. So I'm going to swatch these on the other side of my hand just so we don't get these confused. So Orion is the pressed glitter in this palette. So you can see that it's quite chunky. It does have really beautiful reflectivity to it. But to be honest, I've never used this on my eyes because I'm not a pressed glitter fan. When you guys put this on your eyes, you do have to remove it with tape instead of with normal makeup remover. Otherwise, it could scratch your eye. And so I've just never found it really worth it to go in with this shade. But if you like pressed glitter, this is really beautiful. Next, we have Golden Eclipse. This is one of those glittery topper shades that's sort of like a highlighter. This one has a little bit of a golden reflect to it. Next, we have Strawberry Moon, which is in the Experience palette. This one has a pink flip to it, and I'm really glad that this is in the palette because I really like the pink flip. It's one of my favorite of these iridescent shades. Hopefully you can see a little bit of that pink shift on camera. The next three shades are not in the new palette, so we have Spring Equinox, Blue Moon, and then Spacesuit. Here are the finger swatches of those three. The middle shades all kind of look the same in pan, but they do have very different shifts. So I'm not sure if the camera will fully pick it up, but hopefully you can see that this is more golden, this is more green, and this one has a blue shift to it. I am a little sad that these two aren't available in the new palette because they are unique. I don't really have other iridescent shades in my collection with that green or blue glow. And then Spacesuit is also a really fun shade. This is also in a cream formula, and it has a beautiful gold to orange to red shift to it. So this is like the warm tone version of that first shade, Polaris, that we have. Fortunately though, the next three shades are in the new palette. So we have Aurora, Gaia, which is my favorite shade in this whole palette, and then Solar Rain. Here are those finger swatches, and I think you can see how Aurora and Gaia have a really beautiful liquid effect. So here's Aurora. This is kind of that very popular multi-chrome shade that flips from magenta to golden peach to green. Then we have Gaia. This one has an antique gold to green shift to it, a little bit of brownish copper as well. This one is the most neutral toned of all the multi-chrome shades. And then finally, Solar Rain is another sort of translucent shade. Unlike Polaris though, this is in a powder formula, and this has a gold to orange shift to it. And then finally we have Black Hole. This is unfortunately not in the new palette. Black Hole is a really gorgeous, highly pigmented black. Like you saw with just one swipe, that was full pigmentation. I am kind of sad that this is not in the new palette because this is one of the best black eyeshadows I have ever tried. It is a little creamy, so it's not going to be completely budge proof, but it's so easy to apply because that creaminess just makes it really easy to blend out. So if she ever releases this as a single, I would recommend it if you're someone who struggles with blending out black eyeshadows. And as you can see, even when you try to wipe this off, this does have a really good pigment punch. So now let me just give you guys a close-up. Here are all of the shades that you get in the new palette. And I think this is a really nice curation. You have all of the crowd favorite shades, which are these sorts of powder multi-chromes that are really beautifully creamy. So these four, I would say, were the most popular shades from the first release. You do get to try out her cream formula here, which is a little bit more finicky. This definitely creases if you put this on the eyes, but this also can be quite beautiful as a highlight. And then you also get to sample this iridescent shade that she has, which is also very beautiful as a highlighter or as a glitter topper. And then you have this translucent powder shade that she has, which is also very unique. I haven't really tried another powder that's this sort of almost creamy texture, but very translucent. The shade Soul is the one that I would say is the most boring, and I kind of wish she swapped this out for the black shade, since I think that would have been much more useful. Multi-chromes in general just look way better on top of black. You can see the shift much more, whereas this Soul shade is just an ordinary metallic shade. But I do think the color story overall looks really beautiful. Now, if you want to see what you're missing out on, these are the shades that are not included. If you did get one of her mini palettes that had all of the iridescent shades together, then you're not missing out on these three over here. Overall, I don't think you need that many of this type of iridescent shade. Personally, I'm glad she excluded the pressed glitter. I do like Spacesuit, but I wouldn't say it's a must-have because, again, the cream does crease. And with this shade, you can't really use this one as a highlighter very easily unless you have a very deep skin tone. The only shade I am really sad she did not include was this Black Hole shade. But on the whole, I think she did a good job of choosing which shades to exclude. So without further ado, let's get these shadows on my lids. I do already have a full face of makeup on. I tried to keep everything really neutral, so really any direction we go in with this eyeshadow palette will hopefully match with the rest of my face. But if you're curious what I have on, definitely check out the description box below. So first, let me preface this by saying that I think the best way to use this Experience palette is not to do a really complicated eyeshadow look, but instead to just pick one of the shades that you really want to focus on and just blend that all over the lid, especially for these multi-chrome shades because they have so much flip to them. That way you'll be able to see the full flip and really get the full effect. This is not really a palette where you want to be getting into super intricate looks. That said, for the purposes of today's video, I do want to try all of the shades for you guys just so you can see what they look like. So I will be doing a lot more mixing and matching than I would normally do. But just so you know, this is meant to be more of an easy kind of one and done palette. So I've brought you guys close so you can really see what's going on. So to start out, I'm going to do a lot of layering in today's look just so you can see all of the shades demoed. So let me first just go into Polaris and show you guys how I would use the shade. This is a cream shadow, so it's quite unique. And the easiest way to use this is you can really just put this all over the lid for a very simple yet eye-catching effect. As you guys can see, on the lids, the shift really comes out much more. It's a very beautiful shade. You can really see that gold. And then in certain lights that flips over to green or blue. So I actually did a video in the past. I think it was my one with the Natasha Denona Kala lipstick and also the Makeup Forever HD Skin Foundation, where I basically used this all over the lid, and this was the primary shadow. So if you're curious about that look, definitely check out that video. But as you can see here, you can just easily blend this out. It's super creamy, really beautiful, gives you sort of an intergalactic effect. Even though Polaris really doesn't look like much in pan, it is really beautiful on the lids. The only caveat with this shade is that it definitely creases. So it's a very creamy shade, and it's not like this is something where you can set with powder. So definitely make sure you use a good primer underneath. Even with primer, it might still crease a little bit, but this is still a really beautiful one and done sort of shade. So flipping that brush over, I'm going to go into Solar Rain and show you guys this on the other lid. This is also one of those more translucent shades, but this one is not a cream, it's a powder. So you can see a bit of that textural difference already. It's a little bit smoother and easier to apply, but doesn't have the same impact that Polaris does. But this is also just a really beautiful one and done if you want a really subtle shine. This is also one that you could use as a blush topper or as a sort of intergalactic highlighter shade. Moving right along, let's do a cool toned look on this side using Galaxy and Martian. So I'm just going to pick up both of these shades on a finger. I find with this palette, using your finger is really quick and easy. So I'm going to put Galaxy kind of over top of Polaris just on the outer portion of my lid. Hopefully you guys can see that beautiful shift. This is opaque enough that's going to mostly cover up Polaris. And then I'm going to put Martian on the inner portion. Ooh, look at that. These are such pretty shades. I love using these in conjunction with each other because the shifts really go well together, and it gives you that sort of additional dimensionality by having the two of them together. So usually the way I like to use this palette is to first just tap on the shadows with a finger. I find that that gives me the best pigment payoff. And then I'll just take a brush to blend things out. And this is my Esom V33 brush. With this palette, I usually like to use more synthetic hair bristles because all of the shades, even the powder ones, do have a little bit of creaminess to them. And so I do find that synthetic brushes work quite well. So you can still see some of that Polaris shade as well. But I think that just adds a really beautiful effect to the lids. Again, you could also just have a really beautiful look using one of these multi-chromes all over the lids and similarly just blending them out. But today we're being a little bit extra. I'm going to do a similar thing on the other side with Aurora and Gaia. Putting Aurora on the inner portions. You can see that beautiful fuchsia shade. And then Gaia on the outer portion. And Gaia was really my surprise favorite from this palette, so I'm so happy she put this in the Experience palette as well. Just look at how much pigment is still on my fingers. These are really, really liquid multi-chromes. Now the good thing with these shades is that they are sufficiently pigmented on their own, so even though we don't have that black base, I think these still are going on really beautifully and look fully pigmented. Where you're going to see the biggest difference is with these shades or with the more translucent shades, having that black base does transform it from being a translucent kind of topper shade to being more of a full pigment eyeshadow. But that's okay. If you guys have a really nice black shade that you like working with anyway, then that can also play a similar role. So there we go. Here is the teal to blue to purple side. And here is the gold to green to fuchsia side. Now going in with my reference number 13 brush, I'm going to take some of Soul and I'm going to use this on the inner corners. Again, not the most interesting shade, but a really, really beautiful golden metallic. You can see that quality there. Very smooth and creamy and high shine. And then with this Wayne Goss number 7 brush, I'm going into Strawberry Moon. And using this, okay, that was really intense, but I'm going to use this as brow bone highlight. Once you have this on the skin, I think you can really see that beautiful pink shift that it has. This is also a really nice shade that you can use as a topper on top of any of these other shades. Sometimes with multi-chromes, they can sort of come across as being quite dark on the lids because of their black base. And so if you're not a fan of how dark they look, then you can take a little bit of the Strawberry Moon and just scatter it on top, and it'll bring a bit more light to the look. So to finish off this look, I'm going in with my Esom W21, and I'm going to kind of replicate on the bottom what I did on the top. And so on this side, I'm going to first go in with Galaxy and just put this on the outer portion of the lower lash line. You can see a little bit more of that blue shade actually. Interesting. It looks kind of different from the top. And then I'm going to take some of Martian and put that on the inner portion. Isn't that so pretty? Again, cleaning that off, I'm going into Gaia on the outer portion of this eye and Aurora on the inner portion. So here we have the two finished eyeshadow looks. What do you guys think? I'm going to go off camera now, put on some eyeliner, and be back with my overall thoughts about this new palette. So here we have the final look. What do you guys think? I changed my outfit because I thought that this would go better with the overall look. It's a little bit more edgy, and it also has this sort of bi-color effect that's reflected with the two different eyeshadow looks. So in terms of my overall thoughts about this new palette, I think that this is a really excellent curation of the original Lightwork 3 palette. I think if you were interested in that palette and didn't get a chance to get a hold of it, then I would recommend checking out this palette. As you could see today, you can create really beautiful looks with this palette, either by using all of the shades in conjunction with each other, or really just by choosing any one of the shades and putting it all over your lid. I think DANESSA really chose the crowd favorite shades from this original palette, and so you're really not missing out on that much. Especially if you have a black eyeshadow that you already really love, then I think this new palette is pretty much just as good as the original, but for a lower price. On the whole, I love how the multi-chromes in this palette are so fluid and pigmented on the lids. They have really beautiful shifts to them, but also have really nice shine as well. The more translucent multi-chrome shades are also just super unique, and so if you don't have shades like that in your collection, but you are interested in a more subtle take on the multi-chrome effect, then I think those are really great additions to your collection. And then this sort of iridescent type of shadow is really beautiful as well. That one's probably the least unique, so from my standpoint, only having one instead of 4 is probably fine unless you really wanted one of the green or blue shifts. Comparing these shadows to indie shadows from Terra Moons, Cleona, or similar brands, I would say that the effect is a lot less glittery and high shine in comparison to those. This is more of kind of a smooth metallic sheen that you're gonna get. And these shifts are some of the more standard multi-chrome colors, and so you're not gonna get those super unique multi-chrome effects. But per shadow, this palette is a lot cheaper than indie brands, and so if you are interested in these particular colors, or if you prefer your shadows to come in a palette instead of buying them individually, then I do think this is a really excellent deal. as far as multi-chromes go. But I would love to hear in the comments down below what you guys think about this palette. Are you excited about this release? If you have the previous Lightwork 3 palette, do you agree with me that this is a good curation of them, or did she eliminate some of your favorite shades? Also, if you have any favorite ways of using these cream or translucent multi-chrome shades, definitely share those in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for joining me today, and if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time. Bye!